Fellow TFFL owners, welcome to the TFFL Webcast. This is our Week 6 version. It's Wednesday, October 8th. I'm Stick, Managing Editor of TFFL Media and leader of the Aliens. I'm joined, as always, by our terrific panel starring our Commissioner and Skipper of the Sponge Fishermen, Chief. Welcome back, Chief.
Thank you.
We've also got, of course, the owner of our champion, Jack's Giant Killers, Berto.
Hey, Stick.
And the still undefeated K-Wheels, we've got Czar and CEO Hank. Welcome, Hank.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
All right, we've got some big news to talk about. The Ampac's stunning come-from-behind Monday night Bro Bowl victory. We'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as the most recent rash of injuries hitting several star TFFL players. We'll get to those in just a couple minutes. First, of course, TFFL trivia time to start us off. Write down your answers, guys. If you're watching this at home, scribble down your answer. I'll give you the correct answer much later in the show. Hank, I think even you can remember all the way back to 1997 to name our first Packed Bowl winner of the modern era. Can you name the loser, the first Packed Bowl loser? Write your answer down. We'll get back to that in a little bit. All right, Chief, again, welcome back. Kramer helped out a little bit in your absence this past weekend, but I think he's still keeping an eye on things and can tell us the best and worst lineup moves of Week 5 action.
Well, thank you, Stick. It's good to be back. I do thank Mr. Kramer for at least doing the FAIR process. I'm still awaiting the commission report, but maybe by the time the podcast ends, we'll get one. I won't hold my breath. Best worst lineups. The head lizard, the king lizard himself, to self-nominate Pierre Thomas being sat down in favor of Toby Gerhardt as the worst move of the week. And I don't want to get political here because it was fun to see a white guy being a team's #1 running back. You thought maybe he could do something, excited about it. You know, he could go beyond the Mike Allstotts and the Craig Jameses, you know. But no, he's just not capable at this point. So I guess he's going to go back to like a Mike Allstott kind of role where he vultures 3 touchdowns. But I don't think he's startable in his every week play. For the best start of the week, let's go with the Beavers, who, in their amassing of points, got 16 out of Brian Quick. That might be Brian Quick's first TFFL start. I'm not sure. And I don't know who he benched for him. Was he forced to play because of injuries or buys? I don't know. Regardless, even if he refused to make another move to get a better player, which, frankly, I probably would have done, he stuck by Brian Quick and was rewarded. And I wish I could say he needed those 16 points to win, but he needed those 16 points to break 101. So, congratulations.
I think Quick was a free agent move by the Beavers. Good pickup. He was a guy I actually was looking at with Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of the 20th or 13th round for us. All right, Hank, our draft forecast, as well as the playoff forecast, got a little cloudier on Monday night, frankly, with the Ampac beating the Hormel Hams, a bigger mush in the middle.
Exactly. We talked about that last week. Yeah, big win for the Pack, and they keep themselves relevant. I mean, they're still only 2-3 and are definitely facing an uphill climb, but. You look at the divisions and you look at, Stick, your division, and one team is coming out of there at least, and, the Fats have got to get it together in a hurry at 1-4 to stay in the conversation, but they're only a game out in the division. And so the Lizards and Aliens, somebody's has an opportunity to step up and take control. The Killers are a good team, and they're sitting at 3-2, second best record in the conference, so they're going to have a tough time catching me. I'm not going to slow down, Berto, but they're obviously a strong team. The Hams losing is a shocker because they were trying to position themselves as a key team in the South, And now the Mongols sitting at 4-1 are atop, and the Beavers and Devils right a game behind them. That division is shaping up really tough. And the Hams had a chance to really separate from the Sponge and Senators this week, but still only hold a 2-game lead.
Who's getting the first overall pick as of right now?
Right now, it's still the Senators, but the Fats and Sponge fishermen are tied record-wise, and so it's definitely open. And you never know that if the Pack or the Aliens or Lizards, one of the two, happens to stumble several times over the next couple weeks, could get interesting. We got the interconference battles, in full gear, and so we'll see who can separate.
I'm sorry about my division where and we used to do this a few years ago where I won it with a 6-7 record. It might happen again this year. There's some good teams in our division. I think somebody's going to come around, and it could be the Aliens. It could be any one of us. Okay, well we're sort of leaning into the around the tube segment. So let's get going. I'll throw out several trending TFFL topics. Let you guys jump in and tell us all what you think about them. We hinted at this one last week. Let's really dive into it this week. The 2 quarterback keeper strategy. It doesn't happen every year. Every couple of years there is somebody who will keep 2 quarterbacks for one reason or another. This year we had 2 franchises do it. The Aliens, of course, we kept Cam Newton and actually traded near the keeper deadline for Colin Kaepernick. Gave up a second-round pick for him. I think the Hams were more surprising, keeping both Matt Ryan and Nick Foles. And of course, many TFFL owners immediately criticized the decisions, reminding us we can't start 2 quarterbacks. Teams who draft a quarterback too early often get criticized too for that same reason. The Mongols this year were the first team to draft a quarterback. Last week on this webcast, Kramer said you're going to start the wrong guy half the time. And the answer to that is no, and I've got some proof, some stats I can run through. Beyond that, I just don't see why it's a bad idea to have 2 strong options at the league's most important position. Do you guys really disagree?
Yeah, I disagree. So I think when I've held 2 quarterbacks, and I think I've done it once, maybe twice, it's because I didn't have the talent at the other positions to hold. So, to me, when you're looking at your keepers, I still contend that the running back is the most important position in TFFL. So, you take away potentially probably not keeping that 3rd running back that you need to have, or at least a strong 2nd running back. So, to me, it's a loser strategy. It's a losing strategy. I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard for me to justify keeping a non-starter. Now I've kept 4 running backs, I think, every year. And I think the 4th running back tends to be more valuable than your 2nd quarterback for obvious reasons. But and Mike had 2 good quarterbacks, still does. He couldn't generate a trade market to his liking. But you look at the players. I wish I had it here. They threw back in, and if you can get a guy, even a very good quarterback, in the 3rd round of the draft, or if you're drafting late in the 2nd round of the draft, and you're not going to get really a startable running back or a every week starting wide receiver that late in the draft. So I don't know why you would. I mean, stick just from your situation. And you made a decision at one point that Vincent Jackson wasn't worth the number 13 pick in the draft, but Colin Kaepernick was with Cam Newton on your roster. So it's you went for, and don't get me wrong, with the offseason turmoil of Carolina, Kaepernick's your starter, and I get that. But I don't think we understood that at the time. We thought the backup quarterback would be more valuable than an every week start at wide receiver. And no, I've never kept two quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. But it's the old expression of if you got 2, you got none. And you want to have one guy that can be your franchise guy. And that's what we're all looking for. And there aren't a lot of them. when a guy like Andrew Luck comes along, he goes first overall, and an RG3 for that matter, right up behind him, and hoping that they're the guy. And when you look at in the Ham situation with Foles and Ryan, I think both of them could be the guy. Can you criticize him for keeping Foles? He's an Eagles fan. How can you not? Unless you've got a markedly better receiver or running back that you can protect or trade for. I can't fault you. You keep the 7 best players you got, but you're hoping one of those guys really emerges and the other one becomes irrelevant. I think it is the strategy.
The other thing too, the Hams were trying to deal one of those guys. I know Michael and I talked quite a bit about Foles. I'm sure he was peddled to other teams.
Mm-hmm.
So want to hold on to him. He wanted to get other talent. It just wasn't a market.
I'll say this. I think you're better off keeping no quarterbacks than keeping 2.
Sure. I think in an ideal world, it's not a strategy you necessarily pursue. And I'll, Chief, I had some circumstances, and I think it has paid off for me where I felt like I needed a quarterback early in the season. And again, the numbers actually bear that out. Kaepernick has been the better play for me in almost every week. But I think Berto hinted at this. If you don't have better options, it's not a bad thing necessarily to keep 2 really good quarterbacks if you don't have that 3rd or 4th running back. There's no sense in keeping a mediocre running back just to keep 3 running backs. Okay, let's move on. Topic number 2, around the tube. We're going to talk about some of the injuries, and most weeks several offensive players do go down across the NFL and TFFL. This week was no different. I've got a list of 4 guys, TFFL starters. We'll talk about them all in just a second. But as we start to muddle through the bye weeks, these injuries, even relatively short-term ones, become more significant. And you can't put these guys on IR to pick somebody else up, so you better have the existing depth. And I think we're going to start to maybe see the TFFL standings sort themselves out a little bit here. So let me walk you through the 4 injuries. You tell me which teams are best positioned to withstand them and be successful throughout all these bye weeks. We have Calvin Johnson down with an ankle injury, probably out at least 2 weeks, I'm guessing. It basically brings the Hams down to 4 receivers plus Dwayne Allen at tight end. They're all good, and bye weeks really aren't an issue, believe it or not, for these guys. We got Monty Ball out several weeks with a groin injury for the Senators. They actually have, and they're fortunate to have Ronnie Hillman to plug right in, but these guys certainly didn't need to lose their top running back. The Mongols lose Rashad Jennings out several weeks with a knee injury. I think that's really going to hurt these guys. They only kept, speaking of only keeping 2 running backs, they only kept Eddie Lacy and Rashad Jennings. D'Angelo Williams was already battling an injury. And now we have A.J. Green probably out for a couple weeks with his toe injury. I think that's probably a big blow to the Fats, who become all the more dependent on those Denver receivers they've got. So yeah, who can withstand this the best? Who's taking the biggest hit?
So I'll start, Stick. So of the injuries you mentioned, yes, the Hams lose Calvin Johnson, but they also get Andre Williams, who looked fantastic.
Good point.
Replacing Rashad Jennings now. So that's a big one. So the Hams, I think, net, it's probably a wash for them. So in my mind,
you're saying Calvin Johnson and Andre Williams are a wash?
Sure. If Andre Williams, sure, absolutely. The way Calvin Johnson's been playing the last couple of games, and the way Andre Williams ran last game, absolutely. He's the man now.
Grossly disrespectful to Calvin Johnson. He's one of the best players in the league, and
he hasn't been playing great, though. He hasn't been playing great. It's all about getting in the end zone.
All right.
Andre Williams is going to get him touchdowns.
All right. I want to trade with you. I want to trade Calvin Johnson and Andre Williams.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that analysis, but I agree with the thought that the Hams are in the best position to withstand that. Number one, they have a 2-game up, lead on the division. Number 2, look at their other options they have. They have Mike Wallace. They have DeAndre Hopkins, who was a top 6 receiver last time I looked. Keenan Allen. Philip Rivers is possibly league MVP this year so far. Sammy Watkins, who should probably be an every week starter, and And the more I think about it, I really did screw up the draft board by not taking him this year. With 2 more weeks to think about it. And the tight end's been good for Indianapolis. You don't know. He might not get more than 1 target 1 week, but he might get 8 next week. It's just, we all say you want to get players off good teams. Well, that's the problem you have with players from good teams. You have so many good weapons, you don't know week to week, what's it going to do. But I think the Hams should be just fine.
Yep. And the Monte Ball injury for the Sens just helps the Sens, achieve the number 1 pick.
Well, it did it with the Pats too.
Yeah,
It'll just help accelerate the spiral downward.
Yeah, the Fats and the Sens, those 2 injuries are probably the last thing they need to start making their plans to go the other direction this year.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I feel bad for the Senators. They clearly were trying to win this year.
They don't have a first or a second next year. I mean, how's that possible?
Don't they try to win every year?
I think they've been in rebuilding mode in past seasons. This was Kramer, the Tom Brady move. He wanted to win this year. Got caught, I think, between rebuilding and trying to win this year, and it's not working out real well. Yeah. Okay. We need to have the Russell Wilson conversation at some point, and I think this week is probably as good as any. Going back a little bit to the first Around the Tube topic. Russell Wilson as a quarterback, more so than any running back or receiver, was capable of coming in and delivering 28 points, winning that game for the Impact. Hank had argued last week that Russell Wilson is a great NFL quarterback, will never be a good fantasy quarterback. I think Russell Wilson took all of 1 week to prove him wrong on that. He's in, his 3rd season? The sky has got to still be the limit, right?
Yeah, let me tell you who Russell Wilson reminds me of. And this is where most people will say Randall Cunningham or say Mike Vick. The person that he reminds me of is Tom Brady. Brady's first 2 years in the league, he was winning games, the game manager style. He won, a Super Bowl out of those 2 years. His stats were, 175 to 200 yards passing, maybe a touchdown or 2. But man, by the time he got 3 or 4 years, he made that leap into, fantasy good to fantasy elite. And I think Wilson's on that same career path. I wish the hell I had him.
Well, I have to own up, and look, I'm the one who said last week he's a great NFL quarterback, and he is. And maybe not as good of a fantasy quarterback. I mean, he put up 28, so I take that, and good for him. And he's obviously a great player. I was saying I don't know that he can hold up playing like that. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks that run the way he is. He put up 122 rushing yards last week. That's no joke. That's a running back that we all take. And so if he's going to keep doing that, we've seen Michael Vick try to do it. We've seen a handful of guys try to be that combo quarterback, and eventually they're going to get drilled, and it doesn't work for a long period of time. We'll see. Maybe he can be Tom Brady and be the prototypical quarterback, but I'm not going to go all in off 1 week.
But as we talked about before, he slides. So watching that game, of that 122 yards or whatever he rushed for, over 100 yards, 1 in the end zone, didn't get hit, multiple slides, multiple out of bounds. I don't remember him getting hit at all that game. So, what Vic can't do, what RG3 struggle at is getting out, sliding. They're constantly getting hit, and that's why they get hurt. I haven't seen it thus far with Wilson, so it seems like he can stay healthy.
There are old running quarterbacks, and there are bold running quarterbacks, but there are no old and bold quarterbacks. Yeah. Do on math the rest of the podcast.
Old and bold.
Hey, Berto.
Yeah.
When you talk, your screen is just black.
Yeah, I noticed that too this time. There's no. I can see him right now in the small window, but there's nothing when he talks. There's nothing there.
That's the sensors because of the Klunenberg. We can't have those phallic symbols on the webcast.
Is that better?
No, that didn't do anything. The weird thing is your camera's obviously working because you're there in the small window.
All right, talk now, Berto.
How about now?
Now you're black in both windows.
Yeah, moving on.
Yeah, let's move on.
We can hear you though, fine.
All right.
All right. Well, maybe while you try to figure that out, I got one final topic for us. I'm not sure I've really got a question, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Maybe just to stall and let Berto figure this out. We came into this year talking about the Lizards. Their deep running back core, four keeper running backs. Adrian Peterson at the top, Chris Johnson, Zach Stacy, Toby Gerhart. Wow. Peterson, gone.
That hurts.
Chris Johnson, irrelevant. Toby Gerhart, flamed out in a hurry. And Zach Stacy's been banged up, maybe even overtaken by Benny Cunningham. He's plugged the holes somewhat well with guys like Matt Asiata and Jarek McKinnon, good draft pick. That's a big hit to what we thought was a really good running back core.
Yeah, I mean, losing the best player in football is always going to hurt, and so Adrian's demise is a tough blow. Granted, you plug it with Asiata and McKinnon, but yeah, CJ dropped right off the map in a hurry, and Zach Stacy, I guess, isn't the guy. That's tough stuff.
Yeah,
All right.
I have nothing else to add.
Berto, this is going to be a little interesting without you, but time for Eye on the TFFL. Who are we talking to this week?
So we're talking to Chief and about the sponge. So Chief, welcome.
Thank you.
So just a couple questions about the commish role. So I know prior to the start of the season, some debate, internal debate in your mind whether you want to stay in the commish role. So thank you for staying. We appreciate that. So it seems like you've been able to balance the time with the new gig. So what are some of the things that you want to implement going forward as a commish? What is something that you have your eye on right now for the TFFL that you want to push forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really don't have things I want to push forward. What I want to do is not rule anything out. Things like what we're doing right here, right now. And this technology's been around for a couple of years anyway, and it just took one little impetus to say, let's do it.
Yep.
Trying to slightly modify the commissioner reports. And I don't know how it's going to be. Maybe we're better off going back to just a weekly recap. But my feeling is, everyone knows. You can look at the scores and see who did well, who didn't. You know why Beavers won last week. You know why the AMPAC won last week. It's just I just like to try new things. Something so trivial as the league dinner this year at the draft. I don't want to rule anything out. I want to see try new things. If they fail, they fail. If they're worse, we can go back. But once in a while, we can hit on something that's worthwhile.
Okay. Good deal. So,
Chief, this is sort of like Hell Week, huh? Taking questions in the dark like this?
A brother examiner.
I know not of what you speak.
all right. So let's move along here. So what can we all learn from the dues issue that we had right before the draft? Not to dig up old wounds, but what can we all learn from that episode?
Make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. If we're going to have a rule, make sure you're willing to enforce it. Otherwise, remove it.
Okay.
We have. I think right now we have the league we want. And let's pretend it was the Hams that for whatever reason he was out of the country, he just spaced it, his laptop broke, who didn't pay their dues. Now we're talking about a guy who's got the number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And he's gonna be furious. Is it really worth having someone we enjoy in the league leaving the league over non-payment of dues? We have no deadbeats in this league. So just if we have rules, if we have these measures, let's just make sure that they're there for a reason and that we're willing to abide by them.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'll drop it there.
All right. All right, so let's focus a little bit on the Sponge now. So give me the good, the bad, and the ugly from your draft this year. And how does this position you going forward?
My draft was phenomenal this year. No, I can't say that. A couple weeks ago I would have said that. But since it's come up in the week 1 webcast, I think I really screwed up by not taking Watkins at number 10 because I had him rated. If he was on my board, he would have been the top receiver on the board. It was just a no-brainer he was going to be gone. But man, after seeing himself into Brandon Cooks and thinking what he can do in that Saints offense, and how he's so young, he's got potential 5-6 years left of the Hall of Fame quarterback. I couldn't get off that within a 1 or 2 minute on the clock.
Right.
I think everybody was taking Kobe Fleener where I took him. But I thought he had a pretty good connection with Luck going back from the Stanford days. And he played good last year when Allen was injured. And I thought maybe he would retain that. But the problem wasn't Allen. The problem was, and I hinted at this a little bit last segment, is from game to game with that offense, you don't know what's going to happen. It's they have so many offensive weapons and a quarterback who gets the ball to all of them that he'll get 9 targets one game, and it might take him 4 more games to get 9 more. So and that's been rectified more because this week I needed bye coverage, so foreseeing that I got rid of him for Delaney Walker. But I think those are the 2 big holes in my draft.
The Amon Bradshaw was a pretty good pick.
I got Dwayne Bowe late, got Matt Bradshaw late. My 2 picks before I went kickers and defense were Isaiah L. and Marvin Jones, who they're both guys who you figure you're not going to get much from early in the year. Well, definitely not Jones, but by the end of the year, maybe you have a gem there. Especially if you get a guy who gets hurt. Say Golden Tate gets hurt, Vincent Jackson gets hurt. It's good to have a guy like Marvin Jones who, if he wasn't hurt, would probably be a top 5, 5th round pick to get him so late. So without a 2nd round pick this year and also up next year, because I keep giving him the stick, I feel like I handled the draft pretty well.
Okay. All right, good. Next question here. So the Sponge are currently sitting at 72, 71, and 1. Regular season playoffs combined. Yep. So that's the updated stats. So close to the 500 mark. This could, if you continue on this trend this year, you could dip below 500. So a disappointing season in more ways than one. What's the go forward plan? What do you do now? Can you go 6-2 to make the playoffs?
Oh yeah, I catch the hams.
You have to get to 7 wins. So 6-2.
That's all. My team's scoring more than the Hams. I think I'm the 5th highest scoring team in the league, and I'll just go with the hope that eventually I'll get more favorable matchups in my opponents. I've already played the Wheels. I've already played the Killers. The really tough matchups are out of the way.
And you're a 22-point favorite right now.
Yeah, and with 1 game in hand, one game head-to-head, I think I can probably make up 2 games against the Hams. I'm not really sweating that. Now, if the Hams happen to win, I was ready to start cashing chips. I think falling 3 games behind would have been a lot tougher. But I feel pretty good about where I am right now.
Okay.
My team's gotten better every week. We've scored more points every week.
All right, good. So, in your estimation, what's the best and worst trade that the Sponge have ever made? What sticks out in your mind?
You know what I'm going to say for the best trade, don't you? Trading the number 4 overall pick, J.J. Arrington, and Tom Brady and Tony Gonzalez. That might be the best pick in TFFL history, best trade. but certainly in sponge fisherman history.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's painful.
Yeah. And the worst trade was trading my second round pick for Aaron Hernandez. As things turned out.
That hurts.
It does hurt. It hurts. And man, I did it again next year. Trading second round picks, I do a lot, but boy, come draft time, I'm always desperate to try to get them back. But yeah, and it's hard for me to regret that pick because Hernandez was such a weapon in the Patriots offense. But I think that's proven to be a pretty poor pick, quite obviously.
Yeah, the Arrington pick was rough. Arrington trade. Oh well. So the Rivers deal appears to be paying off so far, but how concerned are you about the rest of the roster? So how concerned are you about McCoy? That offensive line, as we talked about last week, is decimated.
Yep.
Sproles is in the picture now.
Yeah, the fact that I've done so well this year with getting nothing from my presumed best players, I think speaks to the depth of my team. I'm fairly happy with that. I'm concerned with them, sure. But the Eagles should be getting some linemen back and healthy.
Yep.
And we'll see. We'll see. I don't know, but I gotta hope that he's going to be better going forward than he's been so far, even if he's not quite to last year's level, which I really don't need. I just need him to be a legitimate number one running back. And I mentioned this to Stick before the draft. I don't really have a true number two running back. Ingram looked to be that role before he got hurt. He had 4 touchdowns in his first 2 games, or 3 touchdowns in the first 2 games. But I really have McCoy and a bunch of number 3 types. But you can play matchups with him, and Ivory's had some big games. Really just had a big one for me last weekend. Bradshaw is certainly startable. When Ingram gets healthy, he goes back in.
And a solid trio at wide receiver, I'd say right now.
Well, they've played every game for me so far until this week. Cooks is on bye. But yeah, the Jackson, Tate, Cooks lineup's been working for me.
Yep.
Hasn't been elite by any means, but it's been good enough. I've got Dwayne Bowe there for a number 4 receiver. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about my roster. I just need that one star player that I'm not getting right now, other than Rivers. Now, Rivers has been a pleasant surprise.
Yep.
I thought it'd be better than average. I didn't expect to be, top 2-3 quarterbacks in football right now.
Okay, good. So a question I've asked the other interviewees on the eye. What's your feeling about some of the other teams out there? Who's overrated? Who's underrated? And why?
Everyone seems to be rated pretty well. By me, anyway. But as far as a league perception, I think I feel pretty underrated right now. Like I said, I think I'm the 5th highest scoring team in the league, and and I'm 1-4. You are what your record says you are. I'm a 1-4 team right now. My one win was week 1, where I've scored the lowest points that I have this year. I'm getting better every week. Hopefully that can continue. It was tough to take a loss this week, I think scoring 76 points or so. But these things happen. They usually take one lucky win and 1 bad beat every season.
Yep.
As far as overrated teams, I'll say the Mongols, and I don't know if they're terribly overrated. I think there's really 2 very good teams, in the K-Wheels and the Giant Killers. And, it seems like Mongols by default that number 3 team. But you look at the team, and especially now with Rashad Jennings hurt, are they really that good? I mean, they got some good talent. They got Randall Cobb. They got Eddie Lacy. They have Jay Cutler, who's good most weeks.
Where do the Beavers fit into that?
I think the Beavers are
After their 116 points this week.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously not that good. I said last week that I thought they're a good team. They're probably a little bit underrated by the league right now. But again, like most years, there's there's 2 or 3 elite teams, 2 or 3 truly bad teams, and everybody else is in that any given Sunday kind of mode.
Okay. All right. So final question here, then we'll turn it over to the panel. What's the Sponge's overall philosophy in building your roster, and when you step into the draft, what are you hoping to accomplish building your roster? What are some of the things that you're looking for?
Well, I try not to tie myself down to any philosophy. Some guys like to get veteran scorers, which I think is a proven way to win. A lot of people like to take their share and then some of wild cards and maybe get 1 or 2 that pan out for you if you're lucky. Everybody seems to want good players on good teams, obviously, but at the same time, a number 1 receiver on a team like Tennessee, might be better than a number 4 receiver on a team like New Orleans. So you got to balance that out too, and it goes back to that Colts thing. You have so many targets that you have to live with the fact that if your guy's not in the game plan, you got to take a 0 through 2 on that game.
Yep.
So I don't think you can really marry yourself to any sort of philosophy. I tend to take a very short view in my drafting. I'm looking for this year. Who's going to score points for me this year?
Okay. You're not looking
early in the draft, and maybe that's why
you're not looking for those flyers.
Well, I mean, not early.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Cooks is going to score points this year, which may ultimately be why I didn't pull a trigger on Watkins. So I think this year, maybe the first 2 years of their career, I think Cooks is going to score more points.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the better career. So yeah, and I'm tending to gravitate towards veterans. And I'll be honest, and this is slightly embarrassing to say, I've kind of taken that cue from Nick Martinelli, this guy who eschews young players and takes the non-sexy veteran guy, and all he does is go out there and make the playoffs. And he's won several Pac Bowls in that philosophy, where he doesn't get tied up in potential. Who's going to score points for me this year? So I think this year and last year, that's sort of been my focus.
Okay.
He doesn't get tied up in researching players.
No, he picks a name that he knows from having watched.
Whatever, if it's done out of laziness, it's still done.
He called me this week to compliment us on the webcast, and he said, I just don't know how you guys have time for it. He said, not the production time. I don't know how you have time to think that much about the team.
Oh, Nick.
Well, Nick, inspire me.
All right. Well, listen, Chief. Thank you for being a good interview today, and I'm going to pass it on to. Let's start with Phil first. Phil, I'll turn it over to you. Any questions for the Sponge?
Absolutely. I mean, Sponge. You look at how things have shaken out, and really, you're at the upper end of the scoring team. You're at the upper end of the power rankings, as it would be by com.com, and yet you're at the bottom in terms of record. So I mean, your lineup is solid. I mean, what do you got to do to turn the luck around?
I can't do anything. I just have to make good decisions and pretend I'm 0-0 every week. Pretend I'm 4-1. And if I get bad luck continues, and I just got to take the mindset. Well, I have a good team. If I add a top 3 pick to it next year, so much the better. If that's the best thing that comes out of this year, or I should say the worst thing that comes out of this year, is I can add a premium pick to the squad. Bring it on.
Okay.
Chief, you started by saying you don't have a draft philosophy, and I think you corrected yourself, saying you go after veteran players, and that's true. I would add that, and I don't know if you're aware of this, you have a philosophy of not drafting running backs in the first round. Going back, I'm not going to go through all these here, but obviously Brandon Cooks this year, tight end Jermichael Finley in the first round 1 year, the infamous Mike Sims Walker pick. Santonio Holmes was a first-round pick for you. I think I'm missing one other guy in there, but you haven't drafted a running back since at least like 2009. You think you got the right guys now with Tate and Cooks?
Well, and a good part of that is I guess you'd call it part of draft strategy. I keep 4 running backs every year. If I don't have a 4th running back I trust, I'll make a move for one. I've kept 5 one year. So, put that with the fact that I'm usually drafting somewhere in the 7 to 10 spot, and I'm in a position. And last year's was Steve Smith was one that you were missing.
Yeah.
I'm in the position where I can take the 7th best rookie running back, or I can take the best veteran receiver. So it just seems to me to be a case of value at that point.
Okay. Good.
Now, the year I took Mike Sims Walker, I was drafting behind Hank, who took DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
Now, somehow DeMarco Murray slipped through. Believe me, I wasn't going to take Mike Sims Walker, and I would have had my running back there. But yeah, I mean, it's chasing running backs for the sake of chasing running backs. I understand you need 3, and you need, I think, 4 good ones, 4 you can trust to win. Yeah, and my wide receiver, failures have been well documented. But yeah, I don't regret not chasing running backs in the first round.
Like I said, I think you've got 2 certainly good young players in Cooks and Tate. Vincent Jackson's probably a keeper for a little while longer. So I don't know if you'll have the need next year.
So Vincent Jackson could be a trade deadline acquisition if this continues out there.
Berto, anything else for Chief?
No, that's it. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
That was fun. Thank you.
All you, Stick.
All right, I'm going to kick it right back to Chief. We're going to hear a lot from Chief this week without a guest. But Chief is now going to walk us through the Week 6 schedule and serve us up a game of the week.
Okay. The schedule, also known as the non-games of the week. We have a Sponge Fisherman at the Lizards, the Hams at the Aliens, Ampac at Devils, Giant Killers at Mongols. That will be a good one. And the K-Wheels at the Beavers. Now, if you've noticed the common thread to these games this week, they're all NoCo versus SoCo. So there's not really a compelling game that's going to help or hurt the playoff race that much. I'm just willing to give the Giant Killers the first wildcard spot right now. But that Senators at Boba Fett's game, I think this is the last chance saloon right here. I think I'm willing to put the loser of that game officially on the outside. So going to 1-5 after 6 weeks, and I understand that Boba Fett's is in the division 1-5. Still might be 1 game behind next week. But I think if you're 1-5, you really start having to look towards next year.
Yeah,
so
that's a great pick on the game of the week. I like that. That could be inside track for #1 pick. Could be tiebreaker implications there. I will say that I'm a little nervous playing the Beavers coming off 116 points last week, and we'll see. They seem to be putting it together.
Well, look, you're not unbeatable. You beat Ralph by 1.
I know. Look. I mean, all it takes is one really great week, and my guy's not putting it together. I have no Jamal Charles this week. We'll see how it goes. Peyton is playing the Jets. That should help.
Should be that'll be a good game. It'll be worth watching.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have an over/under for total points in that game.
Well, I will say that I'm nervous this week with the Beavers. They've been a couple weeks.
Okay, so Sens at Boba Fett. Who wins?
Boba Fett's win.
Yeah, I go with the Boba Fett's as well.
Yeah, the Sens just aren't scoring. The AJ Green injury is going to hurt the Fats, no question. But the Sens just aren't scoring any points.
Well, the Sens lost money, but that's almost a wash.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take Fats on just the fact that they have Stafford. I think might be enough to win, even without without Calvin Johnson there. He should have put up a pretty big game, which frankly might be enough on his own.
Maybe.
Senators out, Monty Ball, and whoever else is on the bye week. So, Stick, that takes care of this segment. What else we got?
All right, it's time TFFL trivia once again.
I feel like we're doing a much better job staying on time this week.
I actually didn't even start my timer this week, so we'll have to see once we wrap it up, but I think we're a little shorter. Okay, TFFL trivia, your answer to the question. Going back to 1997, who was the first team to lose in the Pac Bowl against the K-Wheels in our very first Pac Bowl of the modern era? Hank actually knows the answer, remembers that far back. He's got the Steel City Mongols. Chief, Berto, did you come up with that one?
No, I have no clue.
I had the Sens.
As much as I appreciate your archives and your history, I really don't read it.
Nice work, Stick. Going to spend all that time. I appreciate it.
All right. The interesting thing is the Mongols now have been part of the answer to the trivia question for the first 3 weeks. They were one of 4 teams that were part of the answer last week. We'll see if we can come up with any other non-Mongols trivia questions. Okay, Chief, again, I know you were out of town this past weekend, but some closing thoughts, some reminders looking ahead to Week 6 action, and anything you want to rant about.
Well, my son James is now 6 years old, and I've been trying to get him into Star Wars because, Star Wars is one of the greatest movies. It was important to me. One of my great memories of my childhood was watching Star Wars, with my father in the movie theater, and Empire for that matter. So I'm trying to impart some of that. I brought back a lot of my old Star Wars action figures from my parents' house while I was there this weekend. He's kind of into it, So we've seen Star Wars. I'm saving Empire a little bit, so he can process the whole Darth Vader, Luke's father thing. Well, I tell you what I don't get. Okay, I'm assuming you've all seen the movie at least, once, right? So let's go to the scene where Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo are rescuing Princess Leia from the cell block.
Okay.
With me?
Yep.
Okay, so they have that firefight in the control room where Han gives that great line where he shoots the thing and says, I feel like talking anyway. Right? And then they go in, and he says, Luke, she's in 10, whatever the cell block number was. And Luke goes in, he opens the door, he kind of stares dumbfounded. And Leia goes, What does Leia say, Hank?
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? Stormtroopers wore the same goddamn uniform. Okay, Luke pulled that uniform off a stormtrooper in the Millennium Falcon that went up to look for them. How the fuck does Princess Leia know short, wearing the Corellian armor of the stormtroopers look to be clones? They're all the same height, they're all the same weight, they're all fitting the same uniform. So, fuck you, Princess Leia, aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? I think, maybe they should have left her there. A real short trilogy.
Cynical.
Football's football.
When's the next movie? When's the next Star Wars? 2015, right?
Yeah, it's going on next year, I think. Next Christmas, maybe.
And I'm excited because I'm going to Disney World in the week after next to see what kind of Star Wars themed, adventures they have down there.
Well, they're in the midst of it. I went last year, and they had Darth Vader walking around, and they had lightsabers for sale and that kind of stuff. But they're building some stuff that I think is ready in the coming years. I'm sure around the next movie. But my 4-year-old is obsessed with Star Wars, and I gave him all my toys already, and he loves them.
So there was a bunch of stuff at the Universal, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
So was it Universal, whatever the one is tied to Disney.
So we're gonna be there for Halloween, and we were there like 4 years ago for Halloween. So I had a Woody costume from Toy Story, which I was planning on wearing again. Now, James is going as Luke Skywalker. Should I really have to go as Darth Vader, don't I?
You should.
So when I pull the whole Empire on him, I can say, James, I am your father. Walk around, Disney World. I think it has to happen.
Yes, make it happen.
I think you need to wear the Darth Vader costume down at Disney, but you need to wear the Woody costume for the next podcast.
Yes,
Fair enough.
We do need to have a Halloween edition of the webcast in a couple weeks.
It won't be as good as the Halloween cheerleaders. It's not gonna happen.
Hank has Luke.
Luke has the official Luke Skywalker costume, and he wears it proudly often. I'm not sure it will make it to Halloween in terms of being kept intact. I believe it was a Christmas present last year, so it's got 10 good months of use. Yeah, like I said, it's an obsession around here. That's kind of what he's.
All right. Hank, you seem to be cutting out a little bit here.
I'm getting a little cut from you guys too. It's like maybe it's my internet connection that sucks tonight.
All right. Well, we're wrapping up, and I'll be curious to see just how long we went tonight. I don't think we went 50 minutes again. But let me thank our panel again, Chief. Glad to have you back. I think next week we'll bring on a special guest for the Eye on the TFFL segment. Best of luck to all teams in Week 6. Hope you've enjoyed this. We'll see you again next week. Take care.
Bye, Stick.
Good
Take
night.
care, guys.